They went out of their way to make sure that he was uncomfortable and as miserable as possible.
Welcome to More Than Inmate's Girlfriend. I'm your host, Jay, and this week is a heavy week. This week is a hard week. This week is an episode that has weighed heavily on me, for sure. This is a topic that needs to be addressed. We need to spread awareness. You guys are all very familiar probably at this point, or if you're new, you might not be, but my husband, Nicholas Ely, in Nebraska, is sentenced to felony murder for life for a crime he didn't commit. He didn't do that. But the felony murder rule allows it to happen. This is something that obviously weighs heavily on my heart, and I am actively trying to bring awareness around this felony murder rule and what it really is. But when I hear that there are people in Nebraska and other states, multiple states, most states, I would probably say, that have been in the hole for a decade, everything else goes out the window. I just think even speaking about it now brings me tears to my eyes, because the amount of things and time and people that I've seen and things that I've done and experiences that I've had over the last decade, while there are people that are sitting in a room 23 hours a day, some of which their 1 hour out is not outside. And it's not a unique situation, and it just breaks my heart that this is happening. Today, Crysta has come on the show. Crysta, I have a deep love and respect for her for many reasons. I followed her for a long time. She's been on Nick's Facebook for a long time. She's followed the show basically since the beginning. She's been a wonderful supporter of ours, and I knew one day I would get the opportunity to speak to her just because she does advocate a lot and she has a voice. I knew that her fiancé was struggling. I did not know the extent of the story until we reached out to her and I asked her if she would come on. And it kills me having to share this episode because it is heartbreaking. Trigger warning. This episode is hard to hear. It involves self-injury. It involves a lot of self-harm, suicidal ideations. I want to say torture. It involves torture. But it's so necessary. And if you are going to share one episode out of all of the episodes AJ and I have released, let it be this one. Share this one. This scares me. It haunts me. Once you know about it, you can't unknow about it. It's just a really hard listen, and you feel for Crysta as you hear their story and their injustices. I've shared before on my social media that it's hard sometimes because when things go right for Nick and I, there's this level of guilt because I want everybody to be doing well. I don't want anybody to be suffering the way that I have suffered this last year with Nick and what the administration has done. And then there's the realization that it could be so much worse. And it weighs heavy. And there are people in Nebraska that have it worse than I do, that I pray for daily, because it's not fair and it's not right. And I hope that there is a step in the right direction when it comes to solitary confinement across the United States. But we need to learn more about what's actually happening. And I don't want to hear comments like, this person committed this awful crime. At the end of the day, we're human and we're supposed to be the better person. We're supposed to be the people that are following the law and treat people like humans and it's not an eye for an eye in my world. So please listen to this episode with caution, and please share it with those that you love. Please share it with those that care, you think would care. Please share it with people that maybe you think wouldn't, and maybe it'll help them see what's happening behind some of these prison walls. Follow the show. Follow us on socials. Crysta's information will be linked in the show notes. And I really hope you take what I did out of this episode. Be safe. Take care of yourself. And I'll see you next week. Take care, guys. And I hope you enjoy the episode. Bye. Crysta, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so looking forward to hearing all about Keith and your story. So to start, do you want to tell us about you and Keith and how you guys connected?
Yes, a friend of mine had gotten incarcerated at the facility that he was at, and we connected. I had recognized his name from childhood, but never really paid it much attention. Who would have known that we would end up meeting years down the road? And we just hit it off really quickly. Everything came so natural, our conversations, and just like the feel of just wanting to talk to each other all the time. And it was like one of those things where you just couldn't fight it, you know.
Yes.
And we've been together going on 3 years. So, yeah, it's amazing how in the most unexpected ways you can find love.
Yeah, I agree. And throughout this, I really want to emphasize what kind of person he is too, because we're going into really heavy topics here, and there's so much about him that you love, right? He is someone that you've really fallen for. And from what I've read, he's really changed from who he was due to everything that's happened to him while he was incarcerated, correct?
Yeah, he really has. It's crazy to hear and see comments on news articles about him because they have this perception of him that I do not see. Can't even make myself see it because the man that I talk to and I get to see on video is like this sweet, loving, big teddy bear to me. And he's so kind and he has a heart of gold and he has so much respect for women and children, and he just is incredible. I've never been with a man that is so loving and soft with me.
Oh, I love that. It sounds like he's really changed your life and added to your life.
He has.
So for people who don't know, what is his conviction?
So he's serving life without mercy sentence for a murder that he committed in 2004. Killed a guy that he had caught his pregnant girlfriend at the time having sex with. It wasn't like it was planned or anything. When he caught them, it was just instant rage, you know, and because of his military background, he had hit him just a few times with his bare hands, and the guy was dead. And he was, at that time, going through PTSD and getting on his feet and whatnot.
Wow. I didn't know the extent of that. I'm so sorry. That sounds like such a heartbreaking situation for everyone around.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely took a toll on him.
Yeah. Did he go to trial or did he take a plea deal?
He went to trial.
He did.
And, of course, the girlfriend had went against him, which the whole situation was a mess. His trial was really big on the news, and it was really made out to be something that it wasn't. And they got his life without mercy sentence because the girlfriend had testified against him, that it was planned and that they were trying to rob this guy and such and such. And she did that to try to get out of trouble. And she still had to go to prison.
Right.
Once she realized that she still had to go to prison too, then she recanted, but it was already too late. Because he was sentenced first. It was already too late, but we are in the process of trying to get back into court to hopefully be able to show those merits.
And after he got his conviction, when did this whole situation and this solitary confinement journey start for him?
So he was in general population at the beginning, but he was going through a lot of mental health issues with that type of length of time where you have no out date. He was really angry and just bitter and really rebellious. So he was getting write-ups for like stupid things, nothing even violent at all, just the dumbest of the dumb decisions, just trying to push the limits on the rules. And so he kept on getting sent to the hole and back out, sent to the hole, back out. And Eventually, what led him into solitary confinement was an attempted escape. It was very short and unsuccessful, and the judge had even thrown the escape charge out, as he had never made it outside the building at all, not even close. And then there was a second attempt of escape, and it was also thrown out by the judge because, again, he did not even get close to escaping the facility. And because of those escape charges, even though he doesn't have them on his record because they were thrown out, that's what landed him in solitary confinement. And because of his mental health issues, that was kind of the reason he even attempted to escape.
So you mentioned before he had PTSD. Did he have any other diagnosed mental health issues before he was incarcerated?
Yes, he actually has a long history of mental health issues dating back to his early childhood. Paranoid schizophrenia, bipolar, antisocial disorder, a psychotic disorder, borderline personality, manic depression, and anxiety.
Wow, that's a lot to deal with.
Yes, and then he has the PTSD from his childhood trauma, and he served in the military, as well as, at this point, his time in isolation.
So he was incarcerated in 2005, you said?
Yes, he was incarcerated in 2004, but that was while he was going to trial. And then 2005 is like when he hit the max prison. Yeah, and he's been in the same facility since then.
And when did he go into isolation and be in it until now?
He spent about 18 years of his 21 years incarcerated in solitary confinement, but he's been in isolation for about 13 years straight now, so he's been in there since 2012.
Wow.
Long time.
Yeah. So he has this huge list of mental health issues, and then you throw him in solitary confinement for that long.
Exactly. Right.
What are the living conditions like?
During his years of isolation there, they went out of their way to make sure that he was completely uncomfortable and as miserable as possible. They had a special cell that they referred to as behind the glass, where it was closed up by a huge 2-inch thick steel door that only had a little small slot where the food trays would be delivered and mail, and it rarely ever opened up. All the cells are supposed to have a mirror. They went out of their way to remove it because they saw being able to look at your own reflection as a privilege. I'm not kidding. So for the longest time, he had no mirror to be able to see himself at all. The cell is made of concrete walls, floor, ceiling. Inside the cell, he has a desk, a bed, toilet, and sink. So there's very limited room for him to move around in, and it's probably about the size of a parking space. He can only flush his toilet once an hour. If he tried to flush it twice within an hour, he couldn't flush his toilet at all.
Wow.
Yes, so they even limited him on how often he could flush the toilet. He was supposed to have 5 days a week for 1 hour a day to go to outdoor rec.
Yeah.
However, they didn't have outdoor rec. Instead, it was an area that used to be cells, but they took down the walls and put in cages within that area, and then cut slots into the sides of the wall for a little bit of outdoor air to come inside.
No, stop it.
I'm not lying.
That's the level of fresh air he gets?
He was allowed to get. There's 8 steel, dog pen cages inside that area, and there's absolutely no exercise equipment at all. So they pretty much look like large dog kennels. So there's walls all around those. It's all indoors. It's not outside at all. So there's no sunlight. There's very little fresh air. And there's absolutely no toilets or anything so they can use the bathroom while they're stuck in these cages. No running water so they could get a drink while they're in there. And no exercise equipment.
So it's another room?
Yes, inside the facility. indoor rec.
Insane.
But they counted it as outdoor recreation.
Oh my gosh. And just for clarification for the listeners, he's not currently in this facility. Was it like this the whole time?
Yes. They would move him around in the isolation area every once in a while, but typically he stayed right in the same closed behind the glass cell for a very long period of time. I think it was about probably 5 years before they finally moved him from that cell. And actually anybody that goes into that cell, he has his name carved in there. So everybody knows that was made specifically for him because it was not there until they put him in there.
We're still at the beginning stages of this interview, and anybody who's listening whose jaw isn't dropped right now, I can't even imagine just trying to picture this person and what he's been through and all the mental health issues that he has, and then to learn that he's been in these conditions for over a decade is unimaginable.
And the facilities and guards, even they know how solitary confinement affects somebody, but the lack of care anybody had to stand up and say, hey, this is wrong, you cannot do this, insane to me.
So when you met him, he had already been in solitary confinement for a long stretch. What would you say his mental health was when you met him versus the years after knowing him? Did it decline?
I noticed pretty early on that his moods would bounce a lot, and that he had a lot of really irregular sleeping patterns. And then I also noticed the tone of his voice change off and on, from being happy and cheerful to just blah, bland, almost emotionless. And he would talk about feeling lost and alone and just the struggles he was having. And he shared somewhat of what he heard in his head because he had hallucinations from being back there for so long. And his physical well-being was going downhill because he noticed that he went from being a really fit and active person and not having much physical access. He noticed that his joints were starting to hurt and it was causing his body to have issues. So it was a lot. I noticed pretty early on and tried to talk to him about it, but it's not an easy topic.
So even he noticed that his mental health was declining after all these years, as well as his physical. Now we're going into some trigger warning. His desperation and his situation really led him down a deep and dark path that led him to multiple suicide attempts. Do you want to walk us through what those incidents were and what was happening at that time?
Yeah. Back in 2023, he was going through a mental health crisis where he was hearing voices in his head. They were telling him that he had cancer in his testicles that needed removed and that he needed to end his life because nobody cared, and so on and so on. And he asked over and over to be seen, but because of the short staffing, they were constantly telling him, we don't have enough staff, the doctor's not in today, she doesn't have any availability, et cetera, et cetera. So after so many days of being ignored and not receiving any help, he just took it upon himself to remove the supposed cancer by cutting open his scrotum and exposing his testicles. He had cut an X across his entire face and cut straight down the bridge of his nose. It looked like he had been in a huge battle. They had finally taken him to go see the facility doctor and to get patched up and whatnot, but they ended up just bringing him back and putting him right back into solitary confinement again.
After all this?
After all that, they just brought him right back and put him back into the same cell that was causing the mental crisis that he was having in the first place. It was very gruesome.
Yeah.
Very gruesome.
Was he talking to you about this cancer? Did you believe him?
You definitely know it's not real. At the same time, in those moments, that's not the time to be like, it's not real, but you want to try to encourage them to get the help. But there's little that you can do, because who thinks that their loved one is going to take it upon themselves?
Yeah.
And you also hope that the facility hears their cries and gets them help, because that's their job. Their job is to take care of our loved ones. And you don't expect them to just blow them off when they're crying out for help. Exactly. So it's really difficult, and you feel guilty because you don't really know what you can do, because there's really not much that you can do.
Did they notify you that he had hurt himself?
No, I don't get notified. I think a lot of it is because I'm not married to him, so they don't notify me. I usually just have to keep calling. I usually just call a whole bunch of times until somebody gives me an answer.
I know, join the club. And also, side note, amongst people that are incarcerated, because they don't have access easily to medical, like my husband thinks all the time that he's dying, and his buddies always think like someone has stomach cancer, someone is dying of this, someone is dying of that. It's a real thing that they all think that they have cancer or they have an incurable disease or whatever, and they don't have access to medical. So my husband says it all the time too. And I'm like, hey, okay, sure.
And it's not like they can just schedule a doctor's appointment and ease their mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it worse, is that they know that they don't have access. And if something really were seriously wrong like that, would anybody catch it in time?
Exactly.
Is probably their mind thought.
Yeah. And I remember once my husband, he was complaining about his eye, and he's blind from an attack in one of his eyes. And his other eye started acting funny the way his other eye acted before it went blind. So he started thinking he was going to go blind. So then he finally told us after days, he finally told his family, and because he didn't want us to know, because he knew that we would freak out. So we did freak out and demanded someone go see him and get a doctor, whatever. And then he got a doctor, and the doctor said, you have a severe infection. It's very good that you got an eye doctor to look at you, because they wouldn't have known, and whatever. Anyway, turned out that he wasn't going blind, but he had a severe infection. He had to change medication and all this stuff. He was so like upset that he wasn't going blind, because then he's like, they're never going to do anything now. Because it wasn't an emergency when I declared it to be, I'm never going to be taken seriously again. And I'm like, but you needed a doctor. It was an emergency. Yeah. But they're so scared to even call something too, because they're afraid of not being taken seriously.
Then this year, in April, he was struggling all over again. He was having really bad panic attacks, like super bad, where he literally felt like he was having a heart attack. And I had to try to explain to him that he wasn't having a heart attack. It was just that the panic attacks were so severe, it replicates that feeling. And so he was struggling so bad, and he tried to ask for help again, and they continued to ignore him. And he ended up, not my knowledge, because I had no clue, saving up medication, the Suboxone that they were giving him. And he ended up taking the ones that he had saved up and ODing. And it took 2 shots of Narcan to bring him back, because he was already turning blue. I am so thankful for the nurse and those who found him and brought him back. And after that suicide attempt, they finally moved him to the mental health unit in the facility for observation. However, around the beginning of July, somehow he got a hold of a razor while in their mental health unit, and he cut his arms up with the word help, and he cut his penis halfway off. He cut it all the way down to the urethra, which ended up causing a whole lot of nerve damage.
Oh my gosh. Why did he do that?
He'd been trying to ask to just let him out of the cell for a little bit. He was feeling so claustrophobic, and the anxiety was getting to be too much, and they were supposed to be helping him work down to being able to get more freedom and out of the cell. But he had been, I think, in the cell at that point for like 4 or 5 days straight with no getting out of the cell. He didn't get out of the cell for a shower, nothing. It was like 5 days straight of just sitting in that cell. And it was just getting to be too much.
Wow.
And I honestly can't imagine sitting in a tiny space like that so many days with nobody to talk to. I mean, he would call me, but I know that he was also trying to put on a brave face.
Yeah.
Not to cause me more worry or stress.
How do you feel going through all this?
It was very stressful. It was constant worry, a lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah.
You definitely worry hard, and of course the facility tells you the same answer every time you call, that they're doing okay, they're fine, which is an absolute lie, because here he was having crises and nobody was willing to tell me anything.
And so
I had to wait for him to call.
Yeah. So the first one was in 2023. Then it happens again in 2025.
So when they put him in the mental health unit at his facility, they said it was supposed to help him rehabilitate and get him the correct help that he needed. But all it was they just transferred him to this spot and just stuck him in a cell. There was no group therapy. There was no programs to help him get more time out of the cell. There was nothing helpful about it. He literally just sat in another cell in a different spot in the prison for hours upon hours upon hours, days in a row.
So how did you get him to where he is now?
So I reached out to lawyers Leslie and Lydia from Mountain State Justice. They had worked with him on some smaller little lawsuits that he had, and I knew that they were really big on helping advocate for inmates. So I gave them what was going on, and when they heard about the first suicide attempt, it was the OD, they filed a emergency injunction to get him transferred to the state psychiatric ward for evaluation. But the warden was absolutely against transferring him outside of his facility. So he just moved him from isolation over to the mental health unit and said that their program was more than efficient to provide him with mental health treatment. However, he was able to get a razor while in said mental health treatment unit. So the judge had put in an order that he needed to be sent to the state psychiatric wards for evaluation. And in order to do that, he had to be seen by the mental hygiene commissioner to determine if he needed mental health treatment or not. So they had a meeting, and it was the warden, the commissioner of the mental hygiene, and the assistant attorney general. It was not a real court hearing. It's like a mini court hearing just in the prison. Okay. So no lawyers had to be present or even knew that this meeting was going on. And it was about 2.5 hours long, and during the entire meeting, Keith did not get to speak at all. Instead, the assistant attorney general and the warden Brain talked the entire time, and they spoke about how they did not believe my fiancé was suicidal, even saying that they weren't falling for his act, how he didn't need mental health treatment, and how they weren't about to have a judge tell them what to do or how to do their jobs. And mind you, this entire meeting was recorded. It was on the record. Why they trash talked the judge on the record is beyond me.
Yeah.
But they got it to the point where the state psychiatric facility was afraid to take him. So they denied treating him. So that meant that they had to find somewhere else for him to go, which is how he ended up at the facility that he's at now. But it took months. What should have been crucially important and happening quickly took months to get him transferred.
In your opinion, do you think there's a reason why they've been treating him like this?
I believe that the warden has so much hatred for him because they've been at battle for years. And my fiance has told him, like, the things that he does is unconstitutional and he cannot treat people like that. And he's told him countless times that you can only get away with this for so long before, you're going to have to pay for how you treat other people. And he's like, well, nobody stepped up yet, so I'm not worried. Like, he literally had no fear that anything would even happen to him. So he's just kept on using his power against him and other people as well in there, and he's thinking that it was never going to catch up to him and that he could just do what he wanted the way he wanted to do it because everybody always just looked away.
Yeah. Long-term solitary at that facility, how many people would you say are down there?
The solitary confinement area holds about 200 inmates.
Okay.
Currently, right now, it is completely filled. So there's been a few other inmates who have been back there about the same amount of time, if not longer, than my fiance. I know for certain there is a man by the name Ronald Williams who is about 82 years old, and he has been in isolation since the facility was built back in 1996. That is about 30 years of solitary confinement. 82-year-old man who cleans the little bathroom hallway area for those in solitary confinement, and he misses spots because he can't see them. He's 82 years old. His vision's going. He's not at his prime anymore. No. He's slow. He's old. And he's still considered a threat at the facility. There are so many of them
that are still down there. Do you know why he's down there, that one?
So before the facility was built, he escaped the old penitentiary prison and had made it all the way over to, I believe, Colorado.
Wow.
And he picked up a charge while he was on the run after he escaped, and they extradited him over here because he had to finish out his time here. He's never getting out of over here anyway. He's staying in there till it passes.
Wow.
But I think that's the biggest reason was because he had escaped the old facility.
Right.
So when they built the new one, they just put him directly into isolation.
Even though it's very different now, but anyways.
Yeah, right. How can you use somebody's escape from 30 years ago as justifying keeping them in isolation?
It's just lack of compassion.
Right. And there's several other inmates. I believe there's a guy named Freddie who has been in there roughly the same amount of years as my fiance, as well as a few others. And there's one guy who is currently out of prison and doing amazing, named Chima, and he spent 3 years in solitary confinement. And he was back there for what the facility called confidential information.
Yeah.
And they never, to this day, told him why he was even back there for 3 years.
Yeah.
But
crazy.
He did use his time because he didn't have any mental health conditions.
Okay.
So he was able to use his time in isolation to create a whole business that he actually has now.
Oh, wow, cool.
And I think his business is called Myamir Technologies, and it's pretty incredible.
Oh, nice.
But he had no mental health condition prior, and he had a positive support system on the outside.
Makes a
And
difference.
most don't have that.
And before we move on from the solitary confinement at that facility, can you briefly talk about the Suboxone program?
Yes. So at the facility, and I think pretty much all of the facilities in our state, they use the Suboxone program to pretty much put the inmates on those as a way to control them. Because when they're on those Suboxone, especially if they're on other medications for mental health issues, it slows them down and it just makes them easier to maintain. So now you have a facility where there's, I would say, probably at least half of the inmates on Suboxone. And as far as I've learned, there's not too many places in the United States that even likes to be involved with the Suboxone program.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing. It's very rare.
Right.
And they should be weaning them off of it, not maintaining them on it. That shouldn't be what the program is.
Right.
Crazy. So where is he now in terms of his mental health since he's been moved?
He seems to be in a lot better mental health spot. The first couple weeks were really difficult because he had to withdraw from the Suboxone and all the other medications that he was on. They had him on 22 medications.
Oh my gosh.
Taking a day at the old facility. So he had to go through a couple weeks of withdrawals, which I knew was going to be so painful on him and so taxing. So those first few weeks, he was like not happy, very just angry, feeling miserable, feeling sick. He felt like he was dying. And then we also had to adjust to not being able to call so much because when he first got transferred, he was restricted from being able to call me for a couple weeks because of weaning him off of all those medications. So we kind of had to adjust to the change in communication as well. But he seems to be doing well. He moved down a couple levels in their program, and he's getting to go outside and still in a cage, but it's outdoors. And they also are doing like group therapy in cages where he's able to speak with other inmates and staff. And then they have other activities for them as well. They try to keep them busy and socializing the majority of the day. And then hopefully whenever he moves down another level, we'll have more opportunities to talk, and he should be able to buy a tablet when he moves down another level so he can email me daily for free. So that will be really nice.
So this must feel like the light at the end of the tunnel in a lot of ways, right?
It's really hopeful that they're treating him well and that he's getting to be able to have less restrictions and be able to adapt and get more freedom, better headspace, and just knowing that they're not going to be over medicating him for their own agenda. It makes me feel so much better.
I feel better as you're telling me this. I'm like, this warms my heart that he gets to be in a cage outside. Like, and how sad is that? But it's true.
Right. Yeah, because he hadn't been outside in over 13 years prior to this.
Wow. So, obviously you mentioned he's your fiancé. Are there plans to get married?
We want to get married, but we have a lot of roadblocks in our way. In our state, you have to be on the visitors list. I have not been able to get approved to be on this visitors list. I've been denied by the warden, which I knew that was coming, and prisons and jails. You have to be able to prove that you knew the inmate before incarceration, and even though we explained that he was like a family friend from back then, it wasn't considered close enough to be a valid visitor. So our marriage was denied for that reason, and because he was a 3D inmate, and they supposedly do not qualify and are not allowed to get married because they are not allowed any physical contact with other people when they're a 3D inmate. So,
what is a 3D inmate?
A 3D inmate is an inmate that would reach a certain point in their solitary confinement QOL program that they had, and once they hit like a certain level, they would deem them a 3D inmate, which was pretty much an inmate that they considered a high risk to the security of the facility and others, and they would ultimately never be able to get off of the program. And the program is essentially just solitary confinement. So a 3D inmate meant that you had no way of completing this program and you were doomed to permanent isolation.
Wow. I think a lot of people like myself, when I found out that they won't let you get married, are going to freak out when they hear this, because it just sounds like this warden and the commissary, they've just never received enough pushback on anything, that they just do whatever they want.
I do agree, especially with the warden. Our commissioner is new. I think he's only been in there a few months, maybe, really new, and I know that he's just going based off of what he sees written and from the last one that we had and what he's hearing from the warden himself. So I try not to put too much blame on the new commissioner just because he's only been in there for a few months and it's not like he knows anything except for what he's been told from previous. But definitely I put a lot of the blame on the warden because he knows that denying somebody a visitor and denying somebody a marriage when that could help boost them mentally and emotionally just out of pure spite is wrong.
Yeah. It's his constitutional right as a human being. It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
I hope you get that sorted, and I hope you get that sorted very quickly, because that's not fair.
We are working on it.
Good. I think the biggest question that listeners are going to have is, what makes you stay? I mean, you entered into this relationship. He was already struggling mentally. He was already in long-term isolation for years and years and years. How do you and why? What is it about him? What is it about your relationship that makes you stay despite all of these problems and all of these issues that he's suffered over the years?
What makes me stay is definitely his heart.
Yeah.
I know that the world and many other people out there view him as this monster, as this horrible person, but that's not who I see. That's not who I get. He has been so soft, lifts me up on a daily basis. He encourages me on everything that I do. He enjoys sharing every good, bad, funny, sad moment with me. He's so amazing in so many ways, and I wish that others could see him that way because he's got the kindest heart that I've ever seen in a man, and I just adore him so much. I've never had a guy that just is so loving, and there's not enough words to describe how he makes me feel.
Thank you for sharing that. I could feel it when you were speaking. And I think it's important because this man has been through hell, and I know that he's made mistakes, but we should be doing better as a society.
Exactly. And it's like judging a book by its cover before you even read the story. There's still so much that nobody knows and sees because they won't go past the cover to give him a chance. And when you open that book and read his story, there's a beautiful man in there, and you just have to read the book.
Also equally important is you taking care of yourself through this. I can't imagine the turmoil that you feel daily. I mean, now it's a little bit better, thank God. And I know your communication's a little bit less right now.
Trying to keep time for myself and also keeping time for our relationship. I try to make sure that I'm focusing on self-care, making sure that I'm still living my life, and I still try to make sure that I'm living my life, that he's still a part of all those things too. I do a lot of praying too. A lot of praying.
Yeah, I think we all do.
You do a lot of praying.
Yeah, we've all found God in this experience.
Just kind of giving them both their own time and space, but also still sharing both of them together.
Obviously, you've become this crazy advocate. I don't think you were before, correct?
No.
Yeah, okay, me neither.
Definitely not.
What has this experience been like for you as an advocate, on the advocate side?
I've really fallen in love with it. I honestly had never thought that I would be an advocate for those who are incarcerated at all. This was completely not what I had planned. But as I've listened to his story and listened to other inmate stories and heard stories from other wives and other families who have loved ones incarcerated, my heart just is so sympathetic for them because I understand. I know how they feel. I know how hopeless and frustrated and discouraged they feel when you feel like nobody is hearing you. So I just want to constantly encourage them, share the awareness on different topics, especially the solitary confinement, as much as I can. And hopefully it helps people by sharing our story for others to not lose hope and know that they too can fight and get justice for their loved ones.
For sure. Is there any specific advice you would give anyone that would be just starting to advocate for their loved one out of solitary confinement or anything?
Yeah, I would say make sure to reach out to legal teams and research laws. You've got to make sure that you're researching, because that's where you'll be able to plug in what they're doing is wrong and where it's wrong at, and share their story. I know I hear it so often that people are scared to share their loved one's story, but you know what? It's worth it in the end, because they're going to punish and take away privileges no matter if you stand up or you hide. So voiceless, and don't let the system scare you, because you're already in a spot with very few avenues for them to fight for themselves, that you are their only resource left. So show your support and love by fighting for them and doing everything that you can not to be quiet, so they can get the relief and the help that they need.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's been the most rewarding thing ever. Like finally feeling like you have a little bit of power in such a situation where you have no power.
No power.
I feel like it helps me feel.
Yeah, because they can't silence you.
Yes.
That's the one thing that they can't take away is your voice. And that's ultimately your biggest weapon.
Yeah. That's what my mom says too. She's like, they can do whatever they want to him, but you as his loved one, you as his wife, they can't do anything. So speak.
Exactly.
It's what you're capable of doing. I cannot tell you how much I've learned from you, getting to know you, and this situation. Even though I followed you on Facebook and I was a little bit versed in the situation, speaking to you directly and being able to understand this, I feel like I've taken so much away from this conversation and our previous one, and I appreciate it so much. A fantastic job of really showing us what it's like and what Keith's experience is. So thank you. I think this is important that people hear his story. Is there anything else that you want to share that we haven't really touched on before we go?
I guess I would just want to share the Keith that I see. A hardworking man. He worked the majority of the time. He loved volunteering He really loved working with the elderly and the veterans and disabled. He has so many amazing talents. He's an amazing cook, and my personal favorite is his artistic ability. He is absolutely amazing at drawing. His portrait's beautiful. He's kind and he's loving, and he's done a lot of self-rehabilitation all on his own. And he's done so much even while he's in there helping other inmates with advice, teaching them how to file grievances, giving them food, coffee, clothes if they didn't have anything and they were struggling. They can portray him as whatever, but he has done outstanding things, from being a veteran and saving his platoon overseas and other civilians overseas. I couldn't be more proud of him and his fight and his desire to get better, and I am very grateful. He makes me so proud to know that one day that's going to be my husband.
Aww, I just love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And honestly, I really just feel like you are really going to change so many people's views from this. So thank you. And I'm sure Keith would be so proud of you if he could hear this interview.
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
I'm sure he would.
I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate your vulnerability in sharing all this, because I know it's heavy and I know it's a lot. And even with that, it's important because we need to know the reality so that we can change, right?
Well, thank you for this opportunity, because we've been fighting so hard, and just to know that there's people out there that want to hear his story, and hopefully his story is able to help others. And if they need any guidance, we are glad to be that guidance for them and be that support.
They can help or join any Facebook groups.
I have a page on Facebook and Instagram called End Solitary Confinement in West Virginia, where they can reach out and we can help give them guidance as much as possible. We are not no legal team. We'll help guide them in the right direction and help them find the right resources that they need to get their loved ones help and justice. And it doesn't have to just be solitary confinement.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, take care. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.